In recent years, it seems that a war against religious freedom is being waged here in the U.S. A case in point, the Little Sisters of the Poor's fight against the HHS contraceptive mandate will make its third appearance before the U.S. Supreme Court. Why is there such a concentrated effort to force an order of Catholic nuns to violate their deeply held beliefs? My next guest is very familiar with this case and many others. He's vice president and senior counsel at the Becket Fund and author of the book Free to Believe, The Battle Over Religious Liberty in America. Luke Goodrich joins us from Salt Lake City. Luke, let's start with this case. We discussed it a little bit earlier with Alex Azar, and I know you're very intimate with it. We talked about it last year. This case never seems to be settled. For the third time, the Little Sisters are again trying to argue away this HHS contraceptive mandate. Why is it back before the Supreme Court for a third time?
Well, I've been asking myself the same question, but for those who don't know, the Little Sisters are a group of Catholic nuns who have devoted their lives to caring for the elderly poor. They've been doing it for over 175 years in over 30 countries. And all this started back in 2011 when the Obama administration issued a regulation requiring many employers to use their health insurance plans to cover all forms of contraception, including kinds that could cause an abortion. And this regulation had huge loopholes for corporations like Exxon, Chevron, and Pepsi, but it didn't have a religious exemption for the Little Sisters of the Poor. So the Little Sisters faced a choice. They would either have to give up their religious beliefs about life beginning at conception, or they would have to pay multi-million-dollar fines to the IRS. So instead of that, they went to court, and we at Becket have been representing them for almost a decade now, and we're at the third time at the Supreme Court.
Now, as you mentioned, twice before the sisters have been, the court ruled in favor of them. And in 2018, the Trump Health and Human Services Department issued a new regulation protecting religious nonprofits. So how did the sisters find themselves now back before the high court? I mean, I get that a rule is not the law itself, but I thought in Obamacare, the HHS secretary had the jurisdiction and the freedom to define what the law requires in this area of the contraceptive mandate.
Especially after two different Supreme Court decisions telling the federal government, surely the most powerful government in the world can figure out a way to provide contraception without involving Catholic nuns. And so that's what the Trump administration did. They passed a new regulation saying religious groups like the Little Sisters of the Poor shouldn't be forced to provide contraception and abortion-causing drugs. But the problem is several blue states, the state of Pennsylvania, the state of California, then sued the Trump administration, sued the Little Sisters of the Poor, saying that the religious protection itself was unconstitutional. And remarkably, two different courts agreed with those states and said, hey, Trump administration, you cannot protect the Little Sisters of the Poor. So that's why we've appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we're telling the Supreme Court, hey, third time's the charm. Now is the time to resolve this once and for all and let the Little Sisters get back to doing what they do best, caring for the elderly poor.
Mother Lorraine Mary McGuire of the Little Sisters had this to say about the state of their case. We're grateful the Supreme Court has decided to weigh in and hopeful that the justices will reinforce their previous decision and allow us to focus on our lifelong work of serving the elderly poor once and for all. Now, for those who haven't been to one of these homes that the sisters run, I've been to some of these homes. In New Orleans, here in D.C., it is extraordinary and beautiful work. But my question to you, Luke Goodrich, is a legal one. What is going to be your argument? Are you arguing the law as written that the HHS, the Health and Human Services Department, has the right to define what this contraceptive mandate means or doesn't mean? Is that the heart of your argument, or how are you going to argue it?
The heart of our argument is the Constitution and federal law that says religious people can't be forced to violate their religious beliefs unless the government has an exceedingly powerful and necessary reason for doing so. And here, it's simply plain as day that the most powerful government in the world doesn't have to use Catholic nuns to give out contraception. And the Little Sisters of the Poor should be free to carry out their work on behalf of the elderly poor without government interference.
Yeah, I mean, one would hope that this is the last visit to the Supreme Court for you and these nuns. I mean, is that what your hope is?
Absolutely. We're asking the Supreme Court once and for all make clear the government has to leave the Little Sisters alone.
Well, not only the Little Sisters, any religious nonprofit, or is it that broad?
You're exactly right. This case has huge implications beyond the Little Sisters, really for all religious nonprofits, not only with respect to the contraception mandate that's been kicking around for almost a decade now, but the states in these cases, Pennsylvania, California, they're arguing that all religious accommodations like this are somehow a threat to the Constitution, and so that would put at issue many religious exemptions across federal law.
Well, we'll be keeping our eyes on this case and how that final ruling, what that looks like.